Hello, my name is Betamax80 and I thought that I would give vlogging a go. I'm afraid that I'm going to be working from a script. It's my first video and I am a little bit nervous and new to vlogging, but I thought I would give it a go. I've got three subjects to talk to you about today. Firstly is my fascination for slightly old technology and the reason that it means a lot to me and I find it a worthwhile hobby. Secondly, my thoughts on being a professional student, as in somebody undertaking a course for professional qualification. And thirdly, just a short little piece on being a non-typical millennial. I've got lots and lots of thoughts going on in my head all the time, but I thought I would start with these three subjects, see what your feedback was, and I thought we'd go from there. So firstly, as I mentioned earlier, I'm studying a professional course. I thought that at this point I wouldn't actually go into too much detail as to the field, because being a professional course and me undertaking the qualification, there's an awful lot of what I think Eli the computer guy likes to call back cave rules about disclosing what and where I'm actually studying. So at this point I'm just going to say it's a professional course. I have a lot of interest and hobby interest, let's say, in technology. I used to have a job in tech, but I worked within more of a professional field for a few years now, so it has become more of a hobby and an interest rather than a career for me at this point in time. As I mentioned earlier, I've got two particular favourites in terms of vloggers, or as I believe the term has now become, content creators, and I wanted to just give a shout out to Eli on Failed Normal and Lewis Rosman, because they're huge influences for me and I really do like the fact that they discuss some very real, very genuine issues. They've clearly been there themselves and they're not afraid to talk about them on camera, which I think is a very bold move on their part and a good way forward for YouTube. So this is why I wanted to become part of the movement, really. As a student, moving on to the first point, the slightly old technology aspect, I've got a particular interest in making the most out of existing technology rather than buying the newest or most expensive technology or product, because it's just simply not available to me on the kind of budget that I have. I had an existing HP microserver which I bought in 2013, but was actually old technology at the time. It cost me about £100 because it was roughly 2010 technology, but was still available new. Initially sold as a very niche product because it doesn't fit in a rack like most servers, but it doesn't have the facilities, say a sound card or a good video card, that a desktop PC would normally have. So I've done something about that. I've basically scoured lots of internet forums. People have gone before me to some extent, so I'm not saying I'm reinventing the wheel, but I have included sound, better graphics, and a few other bits and bobs as well, really, which have made it a very interesting desktop PC. One of my main reasons for using this HP microserver as a desktop was its compatibility with Windows XP. Now, it's a very old operating system now, but the thing is, a lot of hardware is designed to work with Windows XP and just doesn't work with newer systems. One case in point, something I'm finding very interesting, is, if I can bring it to the camera, what looks like a very normal mouse, but is actually something produced by Logitech in the year 2000, which is why it looks old. Why it looks like a very old technology mouse, called an iFeel mouse. It actually has a vibration motor in it. I don't know if you've ever played on your Xbox 360, Xbox One or PlayStation 3, I think they were the ones, where the game controller actually rumbles. This does exactly the same thing. A lot of first-person games use a lot of keyboard controls and you actually move around or look around using the mouse. You can't exactly make a vibrating keyboard, but the mouse actually does the vibration, so you actually get a bit of feedback from the game. It becomes more realistic in a way. I find it very interesting because it was a bit of technology that had its peak and then it fell very quickly within the space for about 5 years. I've actually managed to source, it's a game, yes, but it's also a piece of interesting technology or paraphernalia, let's say, because I managed to find this game, and this game is 3 years later than the last published game that supported the mouse, and yet it does actually support the mouse. It's out there on its own. It's a game written 3 years after pretty much the demise of the mouse and the end of any support from the manufacturer. But there it is, it works with the mouse, and it's just very interesting because it's actually quite a graphically involved game. It's quite modern, it's one of the newer kinds of game that work with this computer, and yet it still works. So it's very, very interesting. The other interesting thing I have, two sides to the coin, I also run Windows 7 64-bit on here because it's a basic processor. It's kind of Intel Core 2 Duo age, but so you're talking 2006 to 2010 technology really. But it is 64-bit, so I wanted to also have a play with how capable it is in 64-bit with the lowest use of system resources. Windows 7 is kind of respected as being the sort of the least resource hungry 64-bit modern operating system. We're ignoring Windows XP 64-bit because it basically doesn't exist as far as most software manufacturers are concerned. And Vista was just horrible. I've actually tried running Vista on this computer. Windows 7 is actually an awful lot better than Windows Vista. I don't know what they did with that. Nobody knows what they did with that. It was awful. Anyway, another case in point, games that can actually, and apps actually, that can use the memory that's in this computer now. Long story. There are limitations with Windows XP, one of them being how much memory you can actually use. But the other thing that I have, and this actually was lying around, I actually didn't buy this for this computer. I actually had bought it, I don't know, 2007, 2008, and I put it to one side because I didn't know what to do with it. It's an Xbox 360 controller for Windows. The only thing that makes it for Windows is that bit there. You see, it's got an adapter. Up to there, it is an Xbox 360 controller, full stop. The funny thing is that these have actually now become a bit of a hardware standard for PCs, and they're still a current thing. It turns out that a lot of Windows game controllers are now based on this very design. So rather than try and have something that actually pretends to be this controller, I use this controller, and you know what? It works very well. Something I didn't know is that it also has force feedback built into it. Now, Microsoft didn't even really promote that fact when they sold this as being a controller for Windows, but there it is. It has very good force feedback. So just somehow this technology fascinates me. I'm recording this at a time when VR is just being talked about. Products like the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift are just being released. They're costing so much money. The HTC Vive costs £800. That mouse I bought new, boxed for £10. That controller I bought new, boxed for £20. In fact, you can buy it still new, boxed for £20. They're brilliant. I actually would argue that games are becoming so, or rather the developers of these games are becoming so bogged down in photorealism, cinematic effects, amazing sound, that they're actually forgetting about the gameplay. I actually like the slightly removed gameplay of these games. I've got some real favourites. Again, you'll see these are all in sort of, what's the word, sold out. I don't know if you know what that is. But it's kind of re-released software that had its prime, is past its prime, and is on what's called a budget label now. It's a bit like a re-released album. Amazing game, can I just say. Amazing. And that's from 2007, and it's still a classic. And this I'm very proud of. Now this looks like some sort of posh card, but I don't know if you know anything about Hot Pursuit or Need for Speed, but This is a special edition of a game called Need for Speed Hot Pursuit that was released only to employees of the game developers. I actually got hold of this on eBay just a few days ago, and the reason I'm so pleased with this is it was released in 2010 and it's about the most modern driving game that I can get to work on this computer. It plays beautifully with that Xbox controller and it's just so therapeutic. I used to play Need for Speed back in 1998, 2000 kind of time. It's developed a hell of a lot since then. It's developed a lot since this 2010 game, but you know what? This 2010 game is still recognised as being one of the best modern incarnations of Need for Speed. I'm very happy with that. I don't need anything more than that. It's fantastic fun, realistic enough for me, and works beautifully with the Xbox controller, so I'm very happy. Just to let you know, I set myself limits with upgrading this computer. The hardware had to be a maximum of £35. I broke that when I bought a new hard disk because what I actually bought was what's called an SSHD, so it's partly a solid state drive, partly a hard disk. The reason I bought that, apart from the price, was also because Windows XP is quite happy to use that. It doesn't know that it's not a normal hard disk. There are issues with solid state drives, I believe, so I wanted to avoid that and get the maximum storage. Windows XP loves this. However, I'm recording this on Windows 7 just to make the point, because I wanted that 64-bit and 8 gigabyte of RAM capability. I only pay half that for software, so I said £35 of hardware. I will only pay up to £17.50 for software. That includes proper licenses of Windows, it includes Microsoft Office. That's my limit for this computer, and it's worked. I also wanted to say I love owning discs of software. I hate having to buy download keys because it's possible that the website will go, or I don't know if you ever tried downloading things from Microsoft, they might just remove the file for good and you might not be able to find it again, even if you do have the key. If you reinstall Windows, you may have a huge problem. I do not like that. Okay, that's enough about the computer for now. If you're very lucky, I'll give you a tour of the hardware at some point, because I'm quite proud of it. I did a lot of research. Everything has to be low profile, so it's a half-height card. Normally PC cards are so high. It has to be that high in this computer, because it's I don't know how to explain it. It's called a micro ITX system. HP didn't really tell anybody that at the time, but it's a very small, literally that size by that size cube-shaped device. It is on my desktop, and you know what, I quite like it because it's quite quiet. You can hear me with my video recording. The computer's next to me. The hard disk spin down. It's very quiet. Okay, enough on the computer. Second part. I'm a professional student, and professional courses seem to generally have prescribed numbers of hours for both academic and professional experience. I completely understand needing to have a certain number of hours of professional experience. I get that. However, I'd like to talk about the academic experience and why I question there needs to be a number of hours. So, I'm a professional student. The course has a prescribed number of hours for academic and practical experience. As a mature student, outside stuff and outside thoughts and concerns about brought on by experience play a part that may not have been present when I was 18 up to my early to mid-20s. Only within the last 5 years I was diagnosed as having what's known as a specific learning difficulty within university circles, which can also affect broader aspects of life. I'm now investigating the possibility that there's an additional challenge which has only just come to light now that I'm pushing my own boundaries as a student again. It's affecting my mental and my physical health, making things that should be simple or automatic very difficult. I'm reviewing my life so far, wondering if these factors cause difficulties in school, previous workplaces, with career progression, friendships and relationships, a lot of aspects to life. And at the moment it feels like society is very inflexible when it comes to people who work or learn difficulty. For example, if I was able to get shifts that lasted from 12 midday to 9 o'clock at night, that would suit my alertness profile absolutely perfectly. It's a huge struggle for me to work the 9 to 5 working day. Not only that, but if I am having practical experience and I am learning something new the whole day, I am absolutely exhausted by the time I get home. I know that some of you will experience this, but let's just say, not just tired, it means I have to go to sleep, to bed. And it's so chronic that I literally struggle to even get up again in the evening, make myself some dinner, eat it, etc., before I'm so tired I need to go back to sleep. It's a real challenge. But I hide it because I'm being a professional and I'm learning, but it gives me very little opportunity for social interaction or social involvement because my evenings are just gone. And then we get to the weekends. I'm in my mid-30s. There are aspects of outside life that need to be attended to. Unfortunately, long story, maybe one for another day. It doesn't mean that the weekend is my own either. Sometimes it means I actually have to travel to another city to do something that is not fun and travel back again. So it's not even like I have a piece at the weekends and then I go back to the 5-day working week exhausted. Really bad cycle. Anyway, perhaps these are discussions to be expanded on another day. Third part. Okay. I'm what I'd like to call a non-typical millennial. Generation X came before me. They were often born in the 1970s. Millennials are often considered to be the basis of the now culture, and I was born in 1980, so I'm considered, apparently, I didn't know this until recently, but I'm considered to be a millennial. However, just to give you an idea, I remember when mobile phones weren't for everyone, but only for very few. And it was quite normal to go to a smelly, nasty payphone box with a phone card and having to keep calls under 5 minutes until your phone card ran out. I remember how hard it was to meet friends or find out information. Before the internet, if you couldn't get to or get hold of the printed material, you just didn't know about it, or its existence, or that you could get hold of it. And meeting friends normally involved circling around the same spot every 10 minutes and hoping that they eventually showed up. They couldn't tell you if they were delayed. You couldn't tell them that you'd be swinging back every 10 minutes. It was a little bit of a hope and a prayer situation. You always had to travel to get to major shops in order to get almost anything, especially electronics. Now we have online stores, and this has revolutionised shopping. That's great. It is a really good thing. But I appreciate it. I don't expect it. I appreciate it. I can cope with things not being new, but I appreciate when things are quick, even if they're not now. I appreciate my smartphone for its capability, and I'm very backward with my smartphone. I'm probably one of 5 people in the world that bought a BlackBerry Classic. I love the keyboard. I'm a keyboard warrior. That's what they call us. It's perfectly good for me. It's a modern smartphone with the keyboard. I'm very happy. Yes, it's touchscreen. Okay, so don't go on to that one. I love my BlackBerry Classic. I won't hear anything bad about it. Unfortunately, it sounds like the software's not going to be supported after the end of this year, so I will have a struggle, but you won't find me with an iPhone if I can possibly help it. Anyways, beside the point. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have technology in our lives, but that we should appreciate it rather than just making it the expectation or what we think is the norm. And really, just to answer the millennial question, because I feel like I'm grouped into this time period, and yet I do appreciate how far we've come, and I appreciate that things weren't always this way and may not be this way again. It's not an expectation. I feel very fortunate. And with that, that's my 3 topics for today. So I appreciate you watching. I would really love to know your thoughts on this first video. I've tried to structure it. I have read from a script. I'm hoping that with time and experience I won't need the script quite so much. I hope you found it interesting, and I'd love some ideas for future videos. I've seen a few things in life. I've experienced a few things in life, and I do like my tech, but perhaps not in the way that an awful lot of the tech channels like. I'm more of a pardon me, a multimedia J, or dare I say it, Drugger One, bless him. Kind of a tech person. I like playing around with stuff just to stretch boundaries, I suppose. I'm not necessarily a let's buy something brand new. I'm more of a boundary stretcher, much more interesting. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Please do comment. I'd appreciate any feedback. Bye bye.